Today on Larry King Now, three-time NBA champ Rick Fox. What do you think your best basketball skill was?
Selflessness and a willingness to turn myself over to the team concept, but defense.
In the last minute, you wanted to take the best player?
Yeah, I wanted him for 48 minutes.
Can racism exist in a black-oriented league?
Oh, it exists. It exists.
What's it like to play in a 7-game series?
The only solitude you have is when you hit the floor. And the 48 hours in between games is a nightmare.
Plus, Kobe is very bright. Do you think at the end of a career he might go to another team with a shot to win one more, like the Knicks?
I wouldn't put it past him going in search of another 1 or 2 championships. And I believe personally that's going to get done in New York.
All next on Larry King Now. Welcome to Larry King Now. Joining us, actor, producer, retired NBA star Rick Fox. Rick is a 3-time NBA champion with the Los Angeles Lakers. Took home titles in 2000, 2001, and 2002. He's also acted in television shows like Oz and films like Holes. His most recent project, the film Off Season, The Lex Morrison Story, is available for rent online and at Vimeo.com. We'll talk about that and lots of other things. Let's get right to things. Current.
Yeah.
Is going to have a good final here, Spurs Heat?
I think so. A rematch is always exciting. I worked the finals last year, and all the way up until the point that Ray Allen hit that shot, I was ready to go down and watch the Spurs celebrate. I think a dynasty completed with Tim Duncan and Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili. I'd gone from complete hatred of them and competing against them to admiration, and was actually rooting for them in that series, if I admitted it. Didn't Allen travel? He got it off. You know, in the NBA, if traveling wasn't a...
What is traveling?
If it wasn't forgiven so often, I guess you could say he might have.
There's something about the 2 finals that are incredible, probably because they're indoor arenas, a Stanley Cup and NBA. The crowds are fully, there's pressure every second. What's it like to play in a 7-game series?
Well, I can think of two 7-game series in particular. One against the Portland Trail Blazers in our first run in 2000 to a championship. We were down by 15 points at home. I dug ourselves out of that hole to go on to the NBA Finals, win our first championship. I didn't sleep that night. I had a baby a few weeks earlier, and it was my first daughter. But yeah, the match of the two, the exhilaration, the anxiety, the stress. I think I lost maybe like 10 pounds in a week just from that stress. And then the other one was the Sacramento Kings series, Western Conference series. That one for the ages. And the same thing. You know, you're living. The only solitude you have is when you hit the floor. The hours between the 48 hours in between games is a nightmare because you can't do anything about it.
And the comparison to hockey, playing every other night, the Kings series with the Hawks, that was unbelievable.
I just got into it, actually.
Yeah, once you get into it, you can't turn it off.
Phil Jackson turned me on to it. We spent the last few weeks, discussing his new journey in New York with the Knicks, and we watched it. We watched the hockey game, and I'm born in Canada, so you would think I would have some hockey background, but I never really got into it.
Do you like the Heat? Can they do it again?
I respect the Heat. I don't think they're the same team, and no team is from year to year. But I like that LeBron James has risen to a level where he understands how to will his teams to victory. I just think there's something about the Spurs team, their depth, the return. I wouldn't say revenge, but the opportunity, a second chance to redeem themselves.
Do they need a healthy Parker, though?
They do. They do need a healthy Parker, or they need at least, like he gave them the other night, 19 solid minutes, even if it's not Tony Parker-like minutes that we've grown accustomed to seeing. They still need him out there. They can't. I don't think they can win without him.
It's hard to compare eras, this era to that era. Is LeBron the best ever?
If we track it, we align his career so far up with the other greats of the game up until this point, I would say yes. I think there's still some longevity that has to show up for him to take that mantle and be the king of not just in nickname, but the king of all time, his greatest player. He's definitely tracking that way for sure.
How would you defend him?
I got a chance to, actually. I don't know how successful I was at it, if I recall, but how would I defend him? Oh man, I'd try to match my willingness to be physical with him, but that doesn't seem to interfere with him at this stage in his game. When he was younger, it did. He doesn't mind being touched and bumped and have shots. I guess I'd try to deny him the ball, but I mean, who's been successful at that? He'll go get it off the boards and take it the full length of the court himself.
In this overall picture of greatness, where do you put Kobe?
I'm biased. I have 3 rings due to Kobe's greatness and Shaquille's greatness and what we did together. But I really had him on track until his injury, surpassing, whether he'd admit it or not, chasing Kareem's record. I think he has, 5 championships. I still saw one more somewhere in there. I thought the Lakers would find a way to, reload quickly, which they've historically done. And if he ended up with 6 rings and done all the things individually he was on track to do and played 20 years, the longevity and the consistency of play, I didn't see that matched by anyone other than Kareem. And to do it as a 2-guard, was even more impressive to me, not being a big man. So where he's at now, unfortunately, is the injury has slid him and slotted him probably in the top 10.
Kobe is very bright.
Oh, yeah, he's sharp.
Oh,
I don't think a lot of people know that.
Do you think at the end of a career he might go to another team with a shot to win one more?
I would not put it past him.
Like the Knicks?
Like the Knicks. We know a lot of the same people there. I think with Phil in New York right now, and I think finishing his career in the next 2-3 years here in LA, if there's not a real opportunity for him to win a championship here, the thought of him leaving may shock Laker fans. I wouldn't put it past him going in search of another 1 or 2 championships. And I believe personally that's going to get done in New York. I really do, and I just believe in Phil. I've been around him, and I know that Kobe's had his greatest success with Phil in a leadership capacity. So the reuniting of the two, I don't think, is unrealistic thought.
We're talking to Rick Fox. We'll talk about his various projects. He's a hell of an actor. And when we come back, Rick sounds off on trending topics from the NBA and beyond. Stay with us. In a little while, we'll talk about the Lex Morrison story, Rick's newest project. Staying with the NBA, what about Phil Jackson? I've known him for some time. I mean, not intimately. What is so special about him?
Oh boy. Well, he's connected spiritually to I think something greater than the game. He's been on that journey for years for himself. So I think he has a balance there in his life. That's a foundation that I think a lot of us are still searching for. Maybe I know myself, I'm still searching for. I had a journey with him as a player that set me closer to an understanding of what worked for me. So I think there's a silence there for him that makes it easy for him to connect to collective group consciousness and then steer it in a way that leads, in the case of NBA players, group of men that make millions of dollars.
Is he hard to play for?
No, not for me. I had a willingness to turn myself over to whatever direction he steered the ship. I've just been that type of person in my own life when it comes to feeling fortunate enough to be on the right team, and I just go with it. So you can be
directed well.
I can be directed well.
What's so special about the triangle?
Equal opportunity. There's a flow to it. There's a dance to it that incorporates everyone. Unlike some of the teams I watch now in the game, they just a lot of still individual attack, which I don't think is the optimal approach to winning basketball games, but the triangle just creates a tempo and a rhythm, creates unity, creates the opportunity where all parties feel involved, and therefore you're not easily predicted.
How do you assess the whole Clipper story?
Well, you know, it was a lot to digest in the midst of the playoffs. I didn't know Donald Sterling personally, although I know a lot of his personal health issues have come into play. And I don't judge people. I
sorry for him?
I don't feel. I feel sorry for the situation. I'm really disappointed that all involved have had to experience such a untasteful.
Can racism exist in a black-oriented league? I mean,
it exists. It exists.
Did you see it when you played?
I think the street flows in all directions. I don't think, but that I think is our current state. We strive to improve daily, I think, as a society, but we regress some days we move forward. I'm not delusional enough to think that it's not still in society.
But it has to be buried, so you couldn't be a racist coach in the NBA.
You could.
How? How would you communicate with?
I think those are the guys sometimes that don't succeed. It's not that they don't succeed because they're racist, but I think you have to care about your players, and if you have at your core sound belief of dislike for an ethnicity or an individual because of their background, that's going to be a disconnect.
You won't win.
You won't win. And so therefore you have those moments in I think professional sports in general, not just the NBA. It lives there. It just lives there.
We recently did a hell of a panel show on the NFL's new ruling on the N-word. Mm-hmm. What do you make of that? Do you think it can work?
I hope it works. I hope it works. Can it work? Will it work? I think communication is nonverbal. A huge chunk of it is nonverbal. I think if your belief of someone is to that level, you don't even have to say the word. It's going to reach. It's going to read. But that's a good start. I like that.
Gays in sports. We have now in the NFL or in the NBA. Think that's coming, and do you think it'll be accepted?
I think it's been here. The acceptance of it will grow with time. Jason Collins and I think Michael Sam. Michael Sam recently in football. Brave men for stepping out and being a voice and standing for their own, first standing for themselves, and being role models for other gay men and women who are in the workplace that want to be expressed. So the acceptance now and the growth comes from their teammates and the rest of the league.
You say it's always been here. Did you know gay players?
I didn't know gay players. I just know as I've evolved as an actor and being around Hollywood and working with gay men and women, the understanding of just the community itself gave me insight into how difficult it's been for gay and men and women to live, and how covered they've lived for so many years. And so I just look at it and I think, yeah, has to have been gay men and women that just haven't felt safe enough to express themselves.
When they more come open, do you think it's going to be accepted readily in NBA locker rooms?
I think you have to demand it. I think you have to just demand equality in general.
Do you have to be a great player? No, in college.
No, I don't think you have to be a great player. The separation of your skill at your job versus your personal life, it's hard for those not to cross. It's hard for me to be a teammate and not interact with a fellow teammate and not know something personally about them. I just think that the message probably reaches the masses greater if it is like if Martina Navratilova had come out when she was in the midst of her playing days. It takes a great player, I think, to galvanize the masses.
After the break, we'll hear about Rick's newest film, Off-Season, the Lex Morrison Story. Don't click away. Our guest is Rick Fox. His newest project is Off-Season, the Lex Morrison Story, available for rent online at Vimeo.com. Is that the only place it's going to be available?
For now.
Is there such a person as Lex Morrison, or is this a fictional story?
It's a fictional story, but he's made up of about 8 different characters throughout my career.
Oh, really?
Guys I played with, and actually, you know, an alter ego. I was pretty well based.
It's you?
No, it's with me without the reins, without the training wheels on, if I had let myself go.
What took you to acting? You're a natural, good-looking, tall L.A. I mean,
I got into it. I went to school for radio, television, and motion pictures, so I always had a desire to be in the field of entertainment. But it took the movie Eddie with Whoopi Goldberg, in an off-season, a lockout season at that.
That was a Celtic story, right?
No, it was a Knicks. It was the Knicks, right? Yeah, the Celtic, the Knicks. It was a Knicks story. I played a Knicks player, and I spent 2 months with Whoopi Goldberg, Richard Jenkins, Dennis Farina, the late Dennis Farina.
Great guy.
Great cast. Other actors like Mark Jackson, other players like Mark Jackson, John Sally, who's acted, the late Malik Sealy, who passed away, and Dwayne Shinsis, who passed away. We all spent 2 months down there shooting this movie, and I got to talk to crew and directors and actors, and really those 3 people, Whoopi, Richard Jenkins, and Dennis Farina, were the 3 I spoke to the most, and I fell in love with it, and I knew that.
What did you like about it?
Group dynamic, storytelling, and playing a role. Same things I get from being a part of great basketball teams, but also just the self-discovery, the journey of bringing parts of myself to characters. I got to learn more about myself. I got to get outside of myself and be a little more extroverted instead of introverted.
Is Lex a comedy?
Yeah. Lex Morrison, the off-season story, is a comedy. Our character is, think of the most dysfunctional guy, but the best player in the league.
Oh, he is the best player.
Yeah, he's the best player in the league, but he's never won. He's as dysfunctional as it gets once the season is over. So keeping him under wraps between June, well, he doesn't make it to June because he doesn't win championships, from April to when he has to get back to training camp it's like wrangling a wild
A lot of basketball scenes?
Very few. Most of it is
set.
Most of it is in the off season, but they got to get him into shape. And when I say they, the PR director and the trainer are assigned to him, and they come and live at his house.
It's the Lakers?
It's the Knights, the LA Knights. So the team does live in LA, and he looks at his off season as vacation, and he is not about working out. He's not about anything other than finding the fun. And these 2 young men, the trainer and the PR director, have to get him to train.
I remember you acted while playing with the Lakers, right?
I did, and that was an opportunity to continue to get my foot in the door and get experience in the off season, so that when I was done playing, I'd actually have some experience, and I'd have some understanding of what would be expected of me on set, and how I grew. I took acting classes and took lessons in the off season, but I was fortunate. I got to work a lot between seasons.
Toughest part about athletics is that athletes' careers end when most careers begin.
Yeah.
That when the cheering stops, you'll never be as famous as you were when you were playing. Does the NBA do enough to help people afterwards?
They've gotten better. I think they do a great job of educating the athlete from day one and providing the programs as they go along in their career to prepare them for life after sports. We have a retirement association. What I would like to see is more of those programs being required as they're playing. Definitely, I'm for that. In post career, I think that can step up to another level. I think there definitely needs to be in place, especially within the first 2 years. If we're going to say, budgetary-wise, the first 2 years is critical time for athletes, because like you said, to that point, they're dealing with, in a lot of cases, 93% of them get divorced. They're dealing with, now for the first time, scheduling their lives 24/7, where we're pretty structured as athletes. Day to day, our game is, we're told where to go, where to be for 11 months out of the year. And so having to fit our time with constructive things to do is difficult for most athletes. And then being at home, dealing with family 24/7, is a new thing.
Yeah.
And then that quiet, sitting in quiet. 20,000 people in arenas and even loud jet engines. The stimulation goes from, high levels to very, very small amounts. And
is it hard to watch after you've played?
I didn't watch for the first year. Didn't go to a game until one of the last games my second year. I got away. I really did. It ended on a loss in the NBA Finals, so it was hard to want to still be around. But physically, getting my body back to a place where I felt healthy.
Next, Rick Fox will take your questions, and we'll play a game of If You Only Knew. Don't go away. We're back with Rick Fox. We'll play a game of If You Only Knew in a little while. You're dating a fellow actor.
Eliza Dushku.
Any plans to marry?
Well, I've been married once.
She's in off-season with you, right?
Yeah, she's in off-season. She's not necessarily high on marriage.
She isn't.
No, she's not racing. She's not a bridezilla, which is fine. Which
How
is
many
fine.
children do you have?
I have two. I have a son that's 19,
Wow.
freshman at LMU, and a daughter that's 14, middle school.
Are you close with them?
Yeah. My son actually we're really close, too close. I think he'd like some space from Dad. But my daughter and I actually, at 14, now that she's into boys, I consider it a success that she still talks to me about them.
That's good.
Yeah, so I really stay close to them.
So you're a father.
Yeah, yeah. Try to be. I hope they'd say that.
We have some social media questions for you. Joshua J13 on Twitter. They called you Sweet Feet in the film Holes. Yeah. What did they call you in the Laker locker room?
Foxy. But that was Chick Hearn. Chick Hearn called me Foxy, and everyone went with it.
At Bobby Blaze 74 via Twitter wants to know, was Odd a tough show to work on, Oz?
No, because it was Tom Fontana. It's some of the great actors that you see working today on other TV shows. I was there in the foundation of the original 8 episodes that went off, and was in it for a number of years. It was great. It was great.
At CaveKs928 on Twitter, how did you meet Jake and Amir from College Humor?
That was my son. My son was a huge College Humor fan of Jake and Amir, and he said, and being a dad, I wanted to know what he was into. I found out who they were, and I went and did some videos with them, and now we're actually hopefully going to get a TV series off the ground. Ed Helms is executive producing, and we'll see if we can get Michael over at TBS to make it.
Keen Dawson on Facebook. What do you think your best basketball skill was?
Selflessness and a willingness to turn myself over to the team concept, but defense. I was a defensive, basketball IQ guy. So. In
the last minute, you wanted to take the best player?
Yeah, I wanted him for 48 minutes. I had to have the best. It was a badge of honor for me to take on, regardless of who that player was. Sometimes Phil would, I'd ask for Tim Duncan sometimes, and he was like, no. But then I'd sometimes get a few stints of him.
You'd rather block a shot than score.
I'd rather steal the ball. Wasn't a big shot blocker, but I'd rather steal the ball.
Now a little game of If You Only Knew.
Okay.
Remember the first girl you kissed?
Yes, Theus.
Thea?
Theus.
Theus?
Yeah, no.
Where were you,
in
Greece?
I was in the Bahamas, of all places.
Really? How old were you?
After school. I was in the 5th grade, so that would be 11.
That's late by today's standards.
Yeah, no.
You ever know what happened?
I thought you could get a girl pregnant kissing. I grew up in the church, so they scared me to death.
You ever know what happened to her?
I don't. No.
What was your first car?
Buick Skylark.
What was your first job?
I worked for my dad at the ice factory, his business.
Toughest person you ever had to defend?
Charles Barkley.
The muscle man. He was pretty rough.
He was wide, but he was also athletic.
Did he jab you a lot? Did he taunt? Did he talk a lot?
He talked a lot, but in a jovial way. He had fun. You never felt threatened by his trash talk.
Favorite arena to play in besides Staples?
I got 2, Boston Garden and Great Western Forum.
City with the most brutal fans?
Boston, because they're great when you're winning, but when you're losing, I got 5 stitches here in my face, I had stitches over here. People threw things at me.
Utah's a tough place to play.
Utah's tough.
The fans never stop yelling, right?
Right, but that's different than throwing. They don't throw stuff at you.
If not basketball, what sport?
Football, tight end.
Dream co-star?
Oh, wow. Someone that's tall, female, tall. I just saw Charlize Theron in, she's great.
Did you see her in the Western movie?
Yeah, I just saw her in the Western.
Was it funny?
I thought the strength of it was the relationship between the two of them. I laughed. I laughed at times.
Proudest sports moment?
Proudest sports moment? Probably, well, championships are an easy one for me because it's what I pursued. Probably being drafted.
What college did you go to?
North Carolina. Actually making it from the little island in the Bahamas all the way to Indiana and then to North Carolina and then to be drafted by Red Auerbach was pretty. Yeah.
What keeps you up at night?
My kids.
Athlete you most admire outside of basketball?
Outside. Wow. I like Federer for a long time. I still do.
He's losing now, though.
I know he lost the other day.
Most underrated NBA player?
Most underrated? I think Charles Barkley for years has been underrated. He still gets a lot of attention.
He's in the Hall of Fame, but
he's in the Hall. I think he's a
superstar.
I think he's a.
What was your pregame ritual?
Wow, I always had to have 3 Advil, and I always had to have 3 sticks of Bubblicious gum, because it kept my mouth from cottoning up and getting dry.
Wow.
Those 2 things I had to do.
Thank you, Rick. Always good seeing you, man. Big thanks to my guest, Rick Fox. Make sure to catch his newest film, Off Season, The Lex Morrison Story. It's available to rent online at Vimeo.com. As always, you can find me on Twitter at KingsThings. We'll see you next time.